Hi guys. Well, it's that time of year again, when I get distracted from my project to make a tiny little Awdry inspired diorama for the Awdry Diorama Challenge. Now, it would have been easy to have chosen a scene with Skarloey in, as I made it last year, but that would be kind of a bit of a cop-out. So, Rheneas. For this build, I'm using the Bachmann Rheneas model for the chassis, and the Fourdees Dolgoch in Era 1 guys as the body. Yeah, it's just not going to work using Rheneas straight out the packet, is it? Looks a bit daft, doesn't it? Okay, Rheneas, let's have your chassis. It's only held on with about 4 screws, but I have found that the body does need prising off the chassis. Not sure if it's got a blob of glue or just the painters dried and stuck them together. The couplings are also easy to remove, just 2 screws and a pull. A quick test fit of the new body and, yes, it fits, as expected. It could have been a pretty short video if it didn't, to be fair. One thing that I've noticed on a few Fourdees models that I've seen finished is that there's a bit of a gap between the top and bottom sections of the cab. To combat this, I'm sanding down the sides that will join together. It's easy to burn through the resin, so I'll try and do a tiny bit at a time. The other pre-painting job is to remove any remains from the print supports. These are typically around the fine details. That being said, it's also very easy to snap these off, so don't do that either. The only 2 areas that show print stepping are the boiler, which I can't do much about, and the roof. Luckily, the roof is pretty easy to sort. Just keep on sanding. I'm pretty happy with the body now, so it's on to painting. I'm doing my typical glue the parts on with cotton buds, because I'm a creature of habit. I also hate this saying. This time I won't be stripping the chassis down to paint the individual parts, because I saw that I didn't do that on my Skarloey. The wheels are just black and things like that, so I'll just whip off the cylinders and mask off the bars so I can do a bit of spraying in my now very noisy spray booth because it's broken. Painting will follow the correct procedure as should be expected now, and that starts with primer. It's grey. I could have used red oxide, sure, but I didn't. Because I wanted Rheneas to match Skarloey, I needed to re-watch that particular video build to find out what colour I actually used. Oddly enough, it looks much more intense than on Skarloey. I mean that post-weathering, because remember, I'm talking to you from the future. The red's dry in seconds, not just because it's extremely hot outside now, but because the paint is acrylic. So I'll mask off any areas staying red, as I'll be doing the black next. Because the Fourdees kit is complete model including the detail attached, it was too difficult to mask off certain parts. And I attempted to hand paint the black, which you can see on the front of the smoke box, but this didn't work, and it made me sad, as well as the others around me. So instead, I used masking tape as much as I could, and then did the finer parts with Maskol. This is masking liquid, so it's easier to get round the silly little bits. The black being used is a primer, so it covers really well. One downside with Maskol is that it dries really fast, and it peels off if you need to add any more near it. So I just use a large blob to cover the part, and then when the black's been sprayed, I remove the Maskol and then fill in any gaps with a fine brush. By hand. The cab interior needs to be painted, and one thing about painting Fourdees kits is that the top half of the cab is separate, so painting them in different colours, such as the TR where the lower half is black and the top half is cream, is really easy, and almost fun. Nah, it's not fun, it's just easy. The buffer beams on Rheneas are the same as the body colour, so I didn't need to do that job. which is nice, so I can go straight on to painting the buffers themselves with black. This will need a couple of coats to look good. Moving on to the finer details, and this model has quite a lot of exposed pipework. This will eventually need to be brass or gold, but that won't cover red very well, so I decided to use black here first. Not only will it give the top coat a nicer finish, but it'll also act as shadowing around the brass. Ah, there you go, brassy gold colour. This job tends to take a bit more time than I expected because it's quite fiddly to work around the back of the pipework. Not that you'll actually see those areas. This area shows the benefit of going in with the black first. As the brassy gold is going on, the black shadowed area really helps highlight the details. There's more detail in the cab to paint up now. It'll be a challenge to even see all this lovely detail when the model's done though, because I'm planning for a crew to be standing in the doorways. Still, the paint's out now and it would be really irritating to not do it. One of the last jobs with this paint are the windows. The best way to paint these spectacle plates is to have the paintbrush with the tip facing the inside of the window, as it minimises the risk of accidentally brushing the red body around it. The top half of the cab interior needs to be finished off with a nice off-white creamy colour, and I found light antique white really covers well. Though one bonus I found from a horrible job of painting cab interiors is that it doesn't need to be a perfect job, as not only will it be super difficult to see inside the cab because of the chaps in the way, but because the black wash will hide the rubbish bits. My lovely black wash. Well, that's pretty much all the painting done, so I'll whip out the decals. The name on the side is a tricky one, as I struggle to find the correct size of the lettering. These do seem a tad large, but they're the same as I used on Skarloey, so I'll use them again. It's the usual technique here: release them from the backing paper with water and then position them on the model. It's not a bad job to do really, because if you're not happy with them, you can just wet them and reposition them. Now then, the blue lining is a different story. This is a very fine blue lining transfer, and it's been in my arsenal for about 15 years now, so it's pretty brittle. Not an ideal characteristic of lining transfers. It's still the same process, but takes a lot more care to get them looking straight and tidy. Luckily, Rheneas only appears to have lining on the cab size, so the torment was short-lived. Another issue from the vintage lining transfers is that it's really tricky to cut the excess off the model like fresh transfers. So I've changed it up a bit, and I'll just paint over the excess with a drop of red used for the body colour. The whole model can now get a few coats of satin varnish to seal it all in. And then the black wash-in can commence. Rheneas is usually pretty dirty anyway, and I modelled Skarloey looking quite neglected, so the wash was pretty heavy here. With it all nice and dry, I can add the glass to the windows. Fourdees actually include clear printed inserts here, and this is something I would love to be a legal requirement on all models, as it saves so much hassle making your own, and they look so neat. So these are nipped off their support with a sharp knife, and then with a bit of gluing glaze wiped around the rim of the spectacle plate, the glazing is pushed in place. As the cab's interior is all done and dusted, I can permanently attach the top. I've added a few drops of super glue along the join line on the bottom cab half. And unlike literally every single time I've dry fitted the top half now, I'm now struggling to glue it on. I think it's either the pressure of knowing the superglue's got a very fast countdown, or that you're watching. The loco's finished, so all that it needs now is a crew. These are the same figures designed to use in the tattoo bodies, but with a bit of persuasion, they'll fit Rheneas. And whilst I did worry that you'll be seeing the same two guys controlling pretty much every engine, the fact that I paint them up very differently and position them in various places on the footplate means that actually you might maybe just not notice that. I tend to paint all figures using a very similar colour palette, because I use Citadel paints for the figures and I only own 3 colours suitable for flesh. Human flesh. The clothing is different though. As long as it's blue, brown, grey or cream and acrylic, I really don't mind who made it. In fact, I encourage variation to make an obvious difference between the figures. One of these 2 figures has actually been painted with the same colour for top and bottoms, but the top has its tone altered with white to lighten it up. The last bits are the tiny details such as the black shoes and his little cute hat. And then they could be washed in black, enamel black. This will settle in the shadowed areas, which will give the figure a nice sense of weight and depth. And whilst they're hanging upside down like pigs out of an abattoir, I'll give Rheneas one final detail: coal. I'm filling in the bunker with scenic glue, which is quite runny compared to normal PVA, and then I'll hand select individual pieces of coal that look small enough to be used on an engine. These are dropped into the gluey bunker with needle tip pliers. The engine's crew are nice and dry now, so they're flipped back on their feet and then glued into place. The fireman went in without fuss, but the driver, not so much. He needed a little bit of fiddling to find a position that he would actually look human doing. And there we go, Skarloey Railway number 2, ready to go. I was going to say ready to rock and roll there, but I'll leave that for when I make Duncan. I don't want to give the game away on what illustration I've chosen to model for the next video, and unlike last year's, this time the whole build will be in one single video. Not sure why, it just is. So yeah, Rheneas. Happy with Skarloey, and I'm happy that another engine's done. I've still got a few left. From the Talyllyn as numbers 1, 3, 4, 11, 12, and a few that have left. And from the Skarloey Railway, well, to any that aren't numbers 1 or 2. But never mind that, we needn't stay here chatting like a couple of old ducks at a pond. I've got a diorama to build in less than a week because I've dilly-dallied and left it too late, and now I've got nowhere to hide. Silly me. Cheers.